Ladies and gentlemen, the next panel will start in approximately 1 minute. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Healthtech Day 2. Please welcome to the stage your moderator, Molly Wood.
Guys, that is my favorite part. When he says my name all happy like that. Welcome to Healthtech Day 2. We're going to have a super interesting, and I don't think it's a complete exaggeration to say life or death conversation with 3 companies that are really disrupting health tech, what it's going to mean, and how it's going to return power to you. What I'm going to do is going to be a little different from the way the stage has operated before because nobody wanted to stand right in front of me and just talk at you. So I'm going to bring all the panelists up at once, and they'll introduce themselves and tell you what they're doing and why it is creating so much change in this relatively stagnant industry. So with that, I'm going to bring up Ellie Kaplan from Neurotrack, Ronald Bruce from myTomorrows, and Lainey West from Heal. Welcome, panel. Thanks for doing this. All right, so we'll do, you know what? We'll do this in the same order, kind of. I'll start with you, Ellie, right on the end, and tell us again what you're doing and what kind of change you are hoping to make.
Sure. So I'm Ellie Kaplan, and I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Neurotrack, based in Silicon Valley. And we are bringing to market the first comprehensive platform to diagnose Alzheimer's disease and prevent the disease, starting years before what's currently available. And what makes us really impactful and disruptive, and this is really the core of what I think is the future of digital health and health technology, is the fact that we're digital, the fact that we use eye tracking to be able to assess people's risk for Alzheimer's disease, and then we have a virtual digital therapeutic to help them prevent. And so we have users in more than 165 countries from around the world, hundreds of thousands of people who are taking our test and preventing through our digital therapeutic. And that you can't do when you think about traditional diagnostics or traditional healthcare.
Ellie, how do you know it works?
Well, we know it works because we have 30 years worth of neuroscience research behind us. So we have a 5-year longitudinal trial that was done at one of the premier Alzheimer's centers in the world at Emory University. And we have 20 years of animal research. And then we've done our own studies where we have looked at people who are asymptomatic for the disease. We test them, and we follow them over time. So they score poorly on our test. They seem fine and absolutely healthy, and then lo and behold, anywhere between 3 and 6 years later, they start to develop symptoms.
All right, we're obviously going to come back to you, but Ronald, tell us what you're doing at myTomorrows.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Ronald Bruce, and I'm a physician by training, and I founded 2 multi-billion-dollar biotech companies, and then one day I got a phone call from my dad. He said he had lung cancer, and there wasn't any treatment available for him. And I had friends of the industry, like since I was at the heart of the industry, I had CEOs of big pharma companies that were offering me new medication that was still in development. And, you know, at that moment in time, I felt, you know, extremely privileged that I could have it, but also I felt it was utterly unfair that I could take these drugs that are now first-line therapies for non-small cell lung cancer and give it to my dad, whereas all the other people couldn't. And so I decided to, with a couple of guys, to start a company which is a marketplace of drugs that are still in development, and we sell these drugs worldwide, and in return, we gather data that will be helpful for other patients and physicians to understand. And with that, we create a kind of a momentum to change certain things in the development and the drug development industry. First, we take the patient-doctor combination central in our approach. Second, we allow patients to use drugs that could be life-saving about 7 years earlier than before they come to the market. Very importantly, all these drugs are being paid for by insurance companies worldwide, or by state insurance, or with other kind of means. So we never let the patient pay themselves. Another important thing is we allow biotech CEOs to run their own companies and develop their own drugs without the necessity to sell their drugs and companies to big pharma. And the last thing is basically doing this, spearheads innovation and make drugs cheaper.
Lainey.
Hello, I'm Lainey West, and I'm from Heal. Heal is an on-demand doctor house call service. We bring doctors to your door. That can be in your home, your hotel, your office, wherever you need it. We typically send a doctor within 2 hours or less. It's shown that sending a doctor to your home is fundamentally better healthcare because the doctor can come in and see your lifestyle and really figure out what can help you be better. And this helps with reducing prescriptions and being able to accurately determine what is actually making a person sick. We have saved over $35 million in cost savings throughout the last 50,000 house calls in over 2.5 years. And a lot of this is going towards our insurance partners that we are with, our patients, as well as the enterprise clients. We do accept insurance, so your typical house call costs the same as your copay as you would go to your normal doctor or an urgent care. So it tends to be a better option, and it's not only more convenient, but it does create a better care for you.
All right, so my blunt follow-up to Ronald, and then you'll get one too, along the lines of how do you know it works, is that even legal?
Well, all the regulating agencies in the world have rules and regulations that allow patients that have very severe diseases to use drugs outside of the approval mechanism, right? So, for example, it's monitored under the same way as clinical trials are monitored. So, but if a life-saving drug is being tested in the United States of America, you can understand that people in the rest of the world don't have access to it. So those regulations do call for early access of such a drug as long as they have the same kind of profile as the ones that are being recruited and enrolled in the clinical trial. So yes, it's absolutely legal.
And then Lainey, how is that sustainable? Like, how can you make it cost effective for doctors to go to people's houses?
So a lot of it is, as I mentioned, we do accept insurance. So we're billing insurance, so we're collecting money in that sense because our cash pay price for patients that do not have insurance is just a $99 flat rate. So we get that question a lot. There's kind of a long plan of how that works in a long scale, but for a short answer, we are automating a lot of these systems. So a lot of the bureaucracy, a lot of the paperwork, a lot of the systems that are just ancient in the healthcare systems, we are trying to bring tech into that to help cut that out and really have a doctor be what they truly need to be as a doctor and spend time with their patients, not paying bills and doing all of their notes. And so really finding where we can bring in tech to empower the doctor and make a better experience overall.
What is, kind of for each of you, and I'll come back to you, Ellie, what is hard about, what's the hardest thing about what you're doing? Is it patient awareness? Is it convincing doctors that, you have clinical trials, but, what's the kind of uphill battle that you face?
Well, I think that there are a few things. One is that people are used to accessing their health care in very traditional ways. So if they have a problem, they're used to going to the doctor and pulling out their health insurance card. And so it's just, there's this big education chasm, and I'm sure I'm sure everyone on this panel faces this, where getting comfortable with the idea that our technology, and we do, I think, a very good job of this on our site of talking about who are the doctors that we work with and where are the research centers that we work with, and that all of the data that supports the accuracy of our test and the value of and the efficacy of the digital therapeutic. But there's a credibility problem that you just don't, that is there, that comes with not being associated or being in the same building as a physician at the Mayo Clinic. And so if you can get past that and really help people get comfortable with the fact that that things are changing and that you can get access to healthcare delivery models, drugs, tools, technology in ways that you never were able to before. And yes, there are some bad ones out there, but there are also some really good ones out there. And get people engaged, then game over. But I think to me that's the biggest challenge, is just sort of crossing that education chasm.
We were talking about backstage about how the kind of common thread between all three of you is this idea of really changing the power structure in healthcare, returning power, giving power maybe for the first time to consumers. What are kind of the risks of that? Like, the benefits seem clear in some ways, but what's the, we worry about data and privacy. We worry about getting the wrong drugs. We worry that maybe we're being lied to by a company like Theranos. What other kinds of obstacles are built in there?
From my perspective, I see a lot of pros here, right? Giving back the power to where it belongs, and that's the people that own their own body, and their body is ill, and they should make the decisions necessarily, etc. I think that the major thing that I'm facing is basically that the doctors need to, understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, because they feel that they're at the top of the pyramid, right? And sometimes, pharma companies have never, ever been communicating to patients directly, actually, without the doctor's knowledge. So, I would say not forgetting the doctor as an important player is the most important thing that you can do.
Do you agree with that? And do you think your network of doctors is in a great position to be recommending services that patients might not otherwise find out about?
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's the greatest part of being able to have a physician in your home is, if a doctor is being called in for something that's minor, like a cough or the flu or something, and being able to go in and spend time and, maybe realize that there's something like a long-term or more serious issue, and being able to kind of sit there and walk them through that and figure out what other illnesses they might have.
Okay, what about this data question? You're all collecting a lot of data. It's very sensitive. You've got a lot of, you've got a lot of power. And how do you protect it? How seriously do you take that? And have you ramped it up? I'll start with you this time, Lainey.
Yeah, we are.
We'll go that way.
We are very, very serious about our data, and we are constantly. Our IT department, our engineers, everything. It's just top of mind always. We are HIPAA compliant, so we have to go through an extra. A barrier there, but it's honestly constantly on our mind. That and HIPAA is just like, I have dreams about it, I'm pretty sure, just making sure that we are constantly being compliant with both of those. So very serious for us, as it should be.
Are you subject to HIPAA?
Well, I think the data question is an important question, and it has two sides to it, right? I think we comply, and we need to comply with the most stringent regulations with respect to privacy and those kind of issues. The other interesting thing is that we collect real-world evidence of how well drugs do work in real people. And, sometimes that's quite different of how those drugs were advertised in their clinical studies. And that has to do with the trick of the enrollment criteria. Sometimes in those clinical studies are so small and so stringent that it looks like Volkswagen is testing its own diesels, right, for the emission test. And, we just put a hose on the exhaust and we look what it really is doing in real people. And that's the reason why people will benefit from the fact that other people will know how these drugs are performing in real life. And with the ultimate aim to bring down the cost and to spearhead innovation in this field.
Yeah, I agree with everything. We take data very, very seriously, and there are two sides to the data, as you mentioned. One, there's the data that you use for research, and then there's data around PHI, personal health information, that you want to protect using HIPAA and HITRUST and all these mechanisms for protecting that data. And we do all of that, and everything's encrypted and siloed, and there's no crossover between what. But then there's the other side of the data that contributes to research and to improving our algorithms. And what we find there is that people, you consent, and we ask them to consent into any kind of study or the sharing of data for the purposes of research. But what we've found, particularly in the area of Alzheimer's disease, is that people want to help. They want to contribute. They want their data to be used in ways that they can sort of pay it forward and help make advances in the space. And so, I think the way we look at it is that we absolutely protect and take very seriously, the aspects of data collection that pertain more to personal privacy. And when it comes to the science, we also use it in very responsible ways to move the field forward, because I think that's an important piece of what we're doing, and we're in a place now where we're able to collect so much that the potential for really making big advances is there, and we want to be part of that.
And then real quickly, we just have a couple minutes left, but whenever you are trying to change a power structure and give power to someone and potentially take it away, there are obstacles, there are objections. So who are the stakeholders that have to come on board? Ronald, you mentioned doctors, but I would imagine some of them are like, I don't want to do a house call. Who do you need to pitch the most? Who could sort of have the most impact in terms of this shift, or in terms of stopping this shift?
Well, initially, everyone would say it's the regulators that are always against progress in the field. But the interesting part of what we're doing, and I think it goes for all three of us, it's not the regulators that are in our way at all. They are really doing this all to make sure that they do the maximum for the people that are ill, and they want science to happen, and they really want good products to come out, and et cetera, et cetera. So actually, it's the entire structure that we have built over the last 40 years, and that structure had multiple components and multiple players, and it's the entire structure that has been conserved in such a way that's so conservative. But it's not one player, and certainly not the regulator.
I will say something we do struggle with a bit is federal regulations, as far as putting up a roadblock that we...
No, it is.
Yeah, for us, for an instance, we are unable to see Medicare patients, which would be a huge market that really needs it. And we can't see them, even if they pay cash. We are unable to see them due to federal regulations. And that's something that we're actively, really working to be involved with. But that's something that, it would be huge for us and for them. So.
All right, uphill battles, but I'm glad you guys are working on it. It sounds like really powerful stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time.